Hey there, this is episode 108 of The First 10 Minutes. I'm Tony Parmenter.
I'm Steve Halliwell.
And I'm Aaron Williams.
And this is a video games podcast where we play the first 10 minutes of a video game. Then we sit down here to discuss how well that game communicates itself to the player, both in terms of what the game is about and how to play the game. And in response to our latest listener poll, which you can find at The First 10 Minutes on Twitter, we hit a follower milestone, so there's a bonus episode, which is what you're listening to right now, and you, the listeners, voted for us to play Yoku's Island Express. Steve, you played Yoku's. How did it go?
Very well indeed. In fact, I had already completed Yoku's Island Express, and I played the first 10 minutes again for our recording purposes today, and enjoyed that just as much.
Tell me more.
Anyway, Yoku's Island Express. Wikipedia tells us it is a platforming pinball adventure video game developed by the Swedish studio Villa Gorilla and published by Team 17. This is the studio's debut project. The game was released in 2018 for the Switch, Windows, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Take that, Mac. In Yoku's Island Express, you control Yoku, a dung beetle, who becomes a postmaster as he arrives at the fictional island of Mokumana. The player is tasked with saving the island from a looming calamity as the island's deity figure is attacked. Alright, so the description of the game on Steam says, meet Yoku, the pint-sized postman protagonist of Yoku's Island Express. Use a unique blend of pinball mechanics, platforming and open-world exploration to unlock the secrets of Mokumana Island, help the locals, awaken ancient deities, and much more in this amazing new tropical adventure. And this game falls into the very common adventure indie Metroidvania platformer pinball single-player hand-drawn physics, family-friendly, great soundtrack, open-world puzzle platformer controller genre.
Oh, a controller game. I like those.
Yep. Alrighty, so in my 10 minutes, let's do a quick recap and let's talk about some stuff. Jump in whenever. Cool. I hit go, I get an opening cinematic. I have some lovely music on my main menu that I should mention first, really, though. As I understand it from the credits, this is actually a live recording of humans making music and singing notes and syllables with their mouths. Also, this leads me to the wonderful realization that there are more people in the band than there are people who made the game. I find quite, it tickles me. It tickles me so much that there are more people responsible for the opening music than the game. I love it.
Right.
I hit start, I get a little cinematic. I appear to be the aforementioned dung beetle floating around on what looks like a cue ball with a sail in the ocean. My character is adorable. It looks like it's waiting for its prom date while it's standing on this little cue ball floating through the ocean, holding its hat in its hands.
Aww.
With its little post bag beside it, its saddlebag. We see another cutaway for a different angle to see that we are approaching an island that looks like it has a big volcano in the middle of it, possibly like a Hawaiian-style island. Seems volcanic. We get a little look at the inhabitants of this island. We see that there are things that look like bunnies. There are butterflies hopping around. This is the first shot we get that is sort of like a side-on platformer, giving me the indication that that's probably what I'm going to be looking at. And the art style here is, I think the Steam tags mentioned it, but it looks like it's mostly hand-painted elements that are then laid like parallax layers, sprites. And some intrigue. I get a flash of some green claws on the screen and a deep yelp in pain and birds flying out of the top of the trees. Presumably this is the aforementioned deity in trouble from Wikipedia.
Uh-oh.
Yep. Still in my cutscene, a wave washes Yoku and his ball onto land, and I get a little saving icon, and now I'm playing the video game. This is about a minute in.
Steve, seeing as you have already told us that you are playing as a dung beetle, I must ask, a ball of what?
Unclear. Honestly, right now, it doesn't look as much like dung as it does look like someone shrunk the moon and made the moon very, very small. One assumes it should be dung. That is unclear at this point. Anyway, I can already see here that there is a rope tying my dung beetle to my ball. They are tethered together.
Yep, that's pretty classic for dung beetles.
Classic dung beetle move. And so when they sort of land on the playfield, I can tell that they are tethered together and they're not going to separate themselves.
Yep.
I get a little overlay of the controller indicating that I should press the stick. I believe it showed me arrow keys first, but I have a controller plugged in. It is a controller genre game after all. And I press left and right, and the ball moves left and right, and my dung beetle, Yoku, kind of runs behind it to push it the direction it needs to go.
Right.
It's worth noting here that it feels more like I move the ball directly rather than I move Yoku. And this is probably for the best, because this is ultimately going to end up being a platformer.
Yep.
And also pinball, so the pinball matters. Yes. So I'm on this beach. I only really have one direction to go. In one direction there is water. In the other direction there is deeper into the island. So I head in. I encounter a pterodactyl, which is a pterodactyl postmaster.
Of course.
Very good.
Yep. I press A to talk to them. It also tells me that I am on Mokumana Beach. I get some text pop up and some like R2-D2 style vocalization, or Star Fox style vocalization, or banjo style vocalization. So I get the kind of thing. And the pterodactyl tells me, you are the new postmaster they sent to relieve me. And they tell me that, okay, here's my old badge. I need you to deliver this to Nim the translator. And these two nouns are highlighted in different colors, Nintendo style, so that I know that they're important. So I already have a quest, and they leave. They take their bag and they fly into the sky, being a pterodactyl. And I am to take over the post duties. And they drop this badge for me to pick up. So I get to know what items that are pick-upable look like and how they sit in the foreground. So I get a sense of the play field that I exist in, as it is separate from foreground visual elements and background visual elements.
Right.
I press A on this and I get told, yes, this is the old postmaster's badge and you're supposed to deliver it to Nim the translator. So it definitely wants me to make sure that I know what I'm doing. And then...
So just to confirm, sorry, Steve, you had to press a button to pick this up? This wasn't an automatic pickup?
No, so I walked over it and I get a little A icon appear over my head, indicating that I can interact with it. It was the same thing that it did when I walked up to the pterodactyl.
Okay.
It was an A above my head to interact.
Just a compulsory reminder, dear listeners, you can look at Steve's playthrough video if you go to our YouTube channel, and there will be a link to that video in the show description for this podcast.
Yes. So it repeats my quest, and then the camera kind of gets taken away from me a little bit, and it zooms way out. And I have like a fog of war covering up what I assume is a side perspective projection of the entire island that I saw earlier. And the camera then pans across over into this cloudy area, and some clouds part, and a little blue icon gets dropped like a map marker.
Yep.
And it says, deliver the post badge to Nim in the village. That pans me back over to where I am, and I get control back. So I get a sense that I have a long way to go further to the right in typical platformer fashion. I continue right, and I find that there are some like bits of fruit sort of floating in bubbles in like a Little Big Planet kind of thing happening here. And as I walk into them, they pop and they fly up to some UI in the top corner. So the only UI I can really see on the screen right now is a fruit piece counter. So right now I have like an orange cut in half as my icon on a leaf background, and it says I have 5 of 100. Bits of fruit, I assume. So further to my right, I fall down like a little gap, I get some fruit, and I get another controller prompt. This one is showing me the left and right triggers, and they are color-coded, and it has like the depress action happening, indicating I should press them, and these colors might do something. And so I do that, and this is where I learn about my pinball. So...
What?
Yep. So where I am in the world, I can still move around with the analog stick, but if I press the left trigger, which is color-coded blue, there is a blue paddle down the bottom corner of the screen that will then move up and down a little bit. And similarly, there is a orangey paddle in the middle of the screen below me that will move up and down a little bit if I pull the right trigger. There is also a paddle that is striped blue and orange that will move when I press either of them.
So it's either, not both?
Either.
Right.
So if I press either the left or the right, the striped paddle will move.
Mm-hmm.
So I do not have to press both of them. It is an either. So other than my mind immediately jumping to, well, at some point, surely there'll be a puzzle element where I need to figure out how to not press one or the other. Anyway, so I can see there's
Stop skill animing. It's too early for skill atoms.
It is too early.
It's never too early for skill atoms.
No, I have many of them already. And I'm going to go gather some more and perhaps combine them together to form new ones.
Right. Molecules, you might say.
You can't stop
Madness.
It's like some sort of chemistry of game design.
These organic chemicals will be mine. So there is a trail of fruit that appears to drop off a little edge. I can see the camera is sort of moved off of its follow mode into a static position, showing me the certain elements, right? So the camera has clearly told me we're no longer in Mario free-roaming platforming style. This is a specific screen that you need to be able to see all of at the same time.
Yep.
So like as I approach each edge, the camera will then sort of push back in and go back into a follow mode.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this little trail of fruit that I follow, and I fall down a little bit onto a paddle, an orange paddle, and as I press it, it hits the ball up and into some bumpers that are currently sort of an orangey color. And as I hit them, more fruit comes out of them. I say they're bumpers because I know they're bumpers. In terms of what they actually look like, they look like glowing outlines of circles in the environment. So they don't sit naturally in the rest of the environment. They stand out from it. Because otherwise I'm kind of in a grassy forest floor kind of environment. And these are glowing orangey bits. As I hit them, more fruit comes out. As I hit those bubbles, I get more fruit. And I also learned that there are one-way platforms in the world as well that I can push through. I keep going to the right. There's a either or paddle that I can hit and some more bumpers that I can run into. I also learned that there are checkpoints in the form of what look like kind of like rose flowers that aren't open. And as you go over them, they open up and it says saving. And you get a little checkpoint save. This appears to happen anytime I roll past one automatically. I get to learn that bumpers seem to have a predictable pattern, so it doesn't seem that I need to necessarily worry about the bumpers giving me a random physics reaction. It seems like when I hit a bumper, it kind of takes over and launches me along a predefined path.
Right.
So even if I hit the bumper slightly different angle of attack, it sort of launches me in the same direction. So like point to point to point, kind of like a Sonic game might.
But this is after you have left the actual paddle itself? Like, does the paddle still affect you depending on how and when you hit?
Yeah, so the paddles that I've encountered right now are just up-down. So they're like more like pistons. So typically you would think of a pinball paddle as pivoting on one corner and sort of flapping at you, like a flipper. These paddles are on pistons. So they're sort of a capsule shape on a piston that just moves up and down. So it pushes me in one direction, but it does push me with what appears to be a physics reaction. So that doesn't center me on the paddle as I push off of it, but when I hit a bumper, it appears to launch me along a predefined path.
So these paddles have been specifically shaped and angled to allow more predictable control in terms of where you go?
So yes, I'm always going to sort of come off these in a specific box shape. Like I'll always get launched along one axis.
Right.
That will make me hit these bumpers here to teach me how the bumpers work and how paddles might work.
Right.
Let's refer to these as lateral paddles rather than flippers.
Okay.
Or pushers, perhaps is probably an easier word than lateral paddles. So I continue on my way. I go through some more bumpers that bump along my path, and I encounter a paddle shape that I just saw that has a lock on it. And as I go over it, it says orange multiplied by 30 and the A button. I immediately assume this means I need 30 fruit to unlock this paddle, and I am correct. However, I currently only have 12 fruit. So I'm now assuming that fruit is my currency, and I'm glad that I picked up the earlier fruit because I now know that I want all of it, all of the fruit. I will collect all the fruit.
So is that telling you now that out of 100 is the amount of fruit that is in this level, or that is the amount that you can hold at any given time?
At this point, it has not made that clear.
Okay.
However, I will fairly soon discover that is my current wallet capacity.
Right.
It is not to complete this level, find the 100 hidden fruits. It is, you can currently carry 100 coins and you have 12 right now.
Cool.
I collect some more fruit past this paddle because I can see it tantalizing me over there on the right side of the screen. I want it. I must unlock the paddle. The pinball must be mine. This is my immediate goal, if you will. I lunge forth, or roll gently forth because I'm a dung beetle. I roll gently forth towards the star fruit, the banana, the orange, the pawpaw, and the much larger entire clump of bananas, entire hand of bananas. But much like the dwarves, I was perhaps too greedy. A giant serpent comes up out of the water near these bananas and flings me backwards, pinball-like, one might say, into a wall, and I fall to the ground. and this big watery serpent that is kind of like an anglerfish because it appears to have a sunflower on the end of its nose, like it would try and trap prey. And it roars a little bit and the screen shakes and it tells me that you will not pass, you must pay the toll. And it demands juicy cove mushrooms before it will let me through because I am too puny. And I get another camera pan. This time the camera doesn't pull out so far that I get a fog of war. The camera sort of just pans up and to the right a little bit, giving me a sense that this is a relatively nearby thing that I need to get because I can see all of the map between me and it as the camera pans over there.
Right.
I now have a short-term goal. Also, I get a sneak peek at some seriously pinball-looking pinball shit up there. It looks like I have multiple different kinds of pushes. Looks like I have like 90-degree flippers. Looks like there are pinball rails that go on weird loop-de-loops. And then it gives me that map preview again. And it kind of feels like it's... I know in my describing of it, it sounds like it's doing this too many times. But I actually really like the thing it does here. Because it's just shown me a lateral pan up to my goal, showing me all the map in between.
Yep.
And as it comes back to me and shows me this in the pulled out fog of war map mode, I can see the distance between where I am and this now revealed Juicy Cove location and the fog between it. And so I have a sense now of how many world space it is between these locations.
Yep.
And that gives me some context for how far away the postmaster Nim the translator must be, because they're not even on screen. There's a little arrow pointing off screen where they would be on the map.
So this is allowing you to extrapolate predictable kind of pacing or timing or how long you're going to spend on this journey.
Yeah, and a really concrete sense now of how big the environment is, because I can see all the area that I've already walked through revealed on the map.
Yeah,
I can see how far through the smoke or through the fog I need to go to get to the juicy mushrooms, and I can see how far away my longer term goal must be.
Cool.
I really like it. Luckily, I have enough fruit to pay the toll now to open up that little locked paddle. Those bananas are coming in handy. So I pay the 30 fruit. 30 fruit like flies out of me and into the locked paddle, and it sort of explodes off. And now this is a pusher that can push me up into another area where I can pinball it up.
Right.
Nice.
And pinball it I do.
So can I interrupt with a question
Please
here,
do.
Steve? I'm going to assume, and make a broad assumption here, that all of us and presumably most of the listeners would be fairly well able to extrapolate how this journey might go if it were a platformer.
Yep.
They'd be running, they'd be jumping, they'd be collecting, they'd possibly be defeating enemies and so on and so forth. But these pinball paddles seem like a distinctive addition / variation from the norm.
Mm-hmm.
As you start making your way towards these mushrooms, does the game double down first on teaching you, this is how the platforming works? Or does it double down on going, this is how the pinball makes it different?
It's far more focused on teaching me what the pinball is, and reinforcing might be the wrong word here, but it's the one coming to mind.
Right. Or establishing, perhaps.
Yeah, it's really... There is no jump. I'm trying to find a better way of saying this. There's no jump.
Right.
This is a platformer where there is no jumping. There is, however, pinball.
There's so many twists to this razor, to this fucking elevator pitch.
Yeah. But what if it was also GTA?
But also GTA.
So yes,
Tell me more about what are the key moments on the way here in terms of establishing the pinballiness?
So in terms of the first time it really hits me is there's a little drop, and I know that A is talk, but A right now does nothing if there's no one to interact or pick up or talk to.
Right.
So I know that there's no jump. Primary action right now does nothing.
Right.
So I haven't got a thing yet. But there won't be jumping. I won't be jumping. There will be no jumping. So whenever
you can't pinball unless the environment layout affords you the opportunity to do that, and that's a very controlled location, I would assume. Yep.
So that first little area that I mentioned with the two pushers, or the left and right pusher and the either pusher, is laid out such that once I've gone down, I have a little drop down towards that save point icon. The only way I can get out of that pit is by using pinball.
Right.
Yeah.
There is no jump. I can't roll out of there. There's a number of times in this 10 minutes where I encounter like a very small lip. Like it's the height of my dung beetle, which is normally like less than a tenth of the screen size.
Yeah.
So even a slight ramp, I can't push my dung ball over it. Right.
Right.
That's not how I navigate. I navigate because I am small and I can fit into these tight spaces and use these paddles to push me around because I don't weigh a lot.
Right.
That's how I do. And the game locked me in early to teach me that, you don't jump. If you fall, it matters because you can't necessarily get back up unless pinball is there.
And if it isn't, then presumably you have to go and find where it is, and then that might push you to a different part of the level that you don't expect or that you haven't been to before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't necessarily get that in this 10 minutes, but that is definitely a thing that happens beyond that.
Okay.
There are numerous places where it's very easy to get down here, just not easy to get back up. Or vice versa. It's very easy to get up here because there's a cannon or something, but it's quite hard to get down this complicated thing.
Right.
So one of the I get locked into and get taught sort of like a pinball staple. I have not played a lot of pinball in my time. I know that I certainly like the idea of pinball, but in terms of actually playing pinball tables, I've never had the patience to learn them or the money to just throw at them.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
what about digital pinball?
I mean, I've played some and I've enjoyed some of it. I think that still ends
Doesn't
up
quite
being,
have the same tactile vibe, though.
No, because pinball is so much about hitting the table.
Yeah.
And the smell of stale beer
Yeah.
and old cigarettes.
And being 8 years old and wondering, what is a Guns N' Roses and why do they have balls?
Just quietly pontificating at the kiss table. What is hotter than hell?
Yeah. And like, I think there's a TV show about this Addams family. I wonder which came first, the TV show or the pinball table? So a staple of pinball, as I understand it, is learning your routes. There are loops that you want to be able to make and control when you make those loops, and then controlling the ball to move through these different areas in the table is how you accrue combos, how you unlock other areas of the table, how you complete missions, as like a regular construct of how pinball works. So very early on, I get one of those here, where there are clearly two sort of circular loops around obstacles, either side of actual flippers, straight up pinball flippers. There's a gutter that has a return on it, so there's a pusher that will get me back into the table. If I go down the bottom through the gutter, like I'd expect on a pinball table, the pusher can get me back on. And I have the flappers, the flippers, the paddle things, the articulating angled ones, not the pushers, in my regular pinball setup, and two loops that appear to have, in pinball terms, like unlit LEDs or light bulbs under them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find that as I go around these loops, as I hit my dung ball around the loop with the paddles, one of these lights will come on.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I've gone around that loop, each of those lights come on, and then a whole bunch of fruit spawns in the table, or in the area that would be the pinball table, that I can then hit the ball through to pick it up and get more fruit. And much like real pinball, I'm not especially good at this. Pinball requires, I think, far more precision of me than I'm ever willing to give it.
Right.
So even if you watch this video back, you'll see there's a number of times where I'm clearly mishitting. Like, Steve did not intend to just hit the roof and reset. Because I'm either hitting too early or too late. And I think this kind of is maybe a good and a bad thing. I'm certainly getting a sense here that I need to care about my pinball playing placement.
Right.
Like for as much as the bumpers or the bouncing elements sometimes appear to have a predefined direction, that isn't always the case. Sometimes you have to play pinball.
Yeah.
So this isn't just about timing it right. This is also about, you need to pay attention to physics and trajectories.
Yes, because there's like tiny differences about how, in terms of like whatever the world scale would be, like millimeters along the paddle will change whether you've gone through the loop correctly or whether you don't have enough speed to bounce around the edge of the loop and you fall back down.
Yeah.
Sure. And because these paddles or pushers or whatever they are, I'm sort of mentally extrapolating here, because they're placed arbitrarily in a non-pinball table-ish layout, you're going to have unusual arcs, you're going to have asymmetry between the paddles and their height locations. Like, there's a lot more potential variation here in terms of where things can hit you to.
Yes.
And how those things are restricted. Right.
So even this first lock-in area I get with these routes that I learn isn't symmetrical the way that you would think of a typical pinball table being, where the paddles are the dead center. These are very close to the middle of the screen, but the screen is not centrally weighted. Like there isn't a central tunnel that I'm hitting the ball up through. Even that central tunnel is off center.
Yep.
And I can see that up to the left, there is a small tunnel that would lead me to 2 pushes that presumably can send me to somewhere else, to more pinball.
Right. Yep.
Once I line that shot up just right and get through that little hole, I can then go on through to more platforming or more pinball.
Right.
So
very literal gating.
Yeah, I have to make this shot or I can't progress. So I'm learning that there are these loops, then I can get bonus fruit by hitting colored paddles, lighting up things on routes, and again, I have a line of fruit to encourage me to make the perfect shot that gets me to the next area.
Yep.
It's also worth mentioning here that this game has some wonderful particle effects for impacts and bumpers. They're very simple, but they're very snappy. There's a lot of juice in them. Yep.
Like when you get the fruit.
Yep.
Nice.
I also find a collectible, which is apparently a wickerling, written in green. Good fortune is bound to come to whoever collects a lot of them. That's literally what it says. So this is a thing that I have X of in a given area. So this tells me that I have 1 of 11, and I know that this is 1 of 11, I believe, in this part of the map. So these are the limited resources to find. What else do I get in terms of pinball thing? Let's run through some pinball stuff. I get to the pinball area after doing some platforming and going through some predefined bouncy areas. So moving towards my mushroom, and there's a thing in the way. So this is kind of like a transparent, sort of like crystallized bubble with fruit in it. It does have fruit in it, so I'm not too panicked about it. And I learn here that I hit it 3 times, it shatters, and I get fruit out of it.
Right.
So these are things that I need to ram into at speed to break. I get through that. I get up to another one-way platform. Immediately to the left of that, when I get up to this top level, there is what looks like a cabbage that has Z's coming out of it.
Yeah.
If I try and talk to it, it just says Z, 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 Z. It's like, fair enough. I keep going to the left because there are some unusual things. There's something that looks like a shield and sword, like a tiny shield and sword that's been dropped that I can't appear to interact with right now. There are some pots, like Zelda-style pots that I desperately want to break. So I try running into them, but they appear to be in the background right now, so I can't hit them. That makes me a little bit sad. I keep going to this left, and I see that there is a big drop. There's nothing under it. And I could just roll off the edge, and in fact, I will in a minute. I unlock another platform by paying 30 more fruit for it. I get pushed up, and I find a literal treasure chest that I press A on, and I get an item. I do. This item is a party whistle.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yep. They call it a noise maker. It says, you got noise maker. It's not a post horn, but
it does what it says.
Yep. It says, press A to blow your horn for attention.
Oh, beautiful. What does it sound like? Oh, that's amazing. Can you do it again?
So this is the bird from Up.
Yes, kind of. I mean, it sounds like a crappy party whistle, birthday party whistle from Coles, is what it sounds like. Which is what it looks like too. It has, again, a wonderful particle effect. It throws confetti. There's like a ring that comes out of it for like a shockwave. And right next to this chest is one of those frozen bubbles full of fruit.
Yeah.
If I bump into it, it does nothing. But if I party whistle it, it blows up.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
What a party.
Which means that now I'm pretty much just a dung beetle pushing a turd through this entire planet going for the rest of the game. It's wonderful. So I party whistle this thing. I drop off a ledge. I do some more pinball-y stuff. I find another hidden guy. I find that my party whistle can break those pots. Hell yeah, take that.
Nice.
Stealing all your fruit. My party whistle on the ZZZZZ cabbage wakes up Baldino, who's like an orange, I don't know. They don't look like any specific animal. They're clearly meant to be some kind of animal. Perhaps a cat? I'm not sure. They have big cat ears. But they're kind of just orange with a sort of a stickman kind of face drawn on them. And they tell me this is a great place to pick fungi. But you've got to be careful. There are poison toadstools that grow near the cove mushrooms. And they warn me that they could knock somebody out for days.
That's where you're going, Steve.
It is.
Yeah, that's your destination.
Also, the
no.
poison toadstool is in red.
Right.
I find a telescope, which does kind of what you would expect. If you use it, the camera zooms way out and gives you a clear view of like the entire area you're in. I spend more fruit, I unlock more paddles, I do more pinball, I get more. I spend fruit to play pinball, I do good at pinball to get more fruit. It's a lovely cycle. I make it to the Cove Mushroom, I collect it. It says, congratulations, you have the Cove Mushroom, map has been updated, feed the eel. But I, being cunning, remember that Baldino told me about the toadstools and that they were near the Cove Mushrooms. So I happened to go a little bit further to the right than perhaps I needed to, and there's a secret. A piece of the wall disappears. Yes, a piece of the wall disappears. I pass behind it, and inside is a red, glowing, poison toadstool. I pick up said poison toadstool, and I head back to the eel. Heading back down is much faster than heading back up, because there's sort of like a different route I can kind of take, like a shortcut.
Right.
It also, as I'm going back the way I came, it spawns a bunch more fruit for me. Like, yay, you did it, have some more fruit. So I work my way back down to the eel. And the eel, who is apparently called Phosphor, F-O-S-F-O-R, says, what is that delicious scent? Is that a cove mushroom I smell? Go on then, hand it over and I'll let you pass. And I get an option. It says, do you want to give him the cove mushroom? If I press left or right on the analog stick, it moves over and highlights poison toadstool. And I think about it briefly, but no, I'm giving you the poison toadstool.
Wow.
That'll learn you for messing with the post.
Okay, so after you had ruthlessly slain the innocent eel, then what?
Innocent extortion eel, yeah. They eat the poison mushroom, they fall into the water. I float on water. Key point to remember, that'll be important later.
Yeah, I don't think being in water is really a problem for an eel, but sure.
I mean, passed out underwater for an eel, they're going to be okay?
I mean, if I pass out in air, I'm generally okay.
I suppose the thing that's throwing me is, like, it does say it's an eel. It does say it's an eel. The eel's probably okay. I float on water, point to remember. I pay 30 more fruit. At this point, I have 93. Don't even feel it. Don't even notice. What else you got? I say to the locked padlock. I hit a checkpoint. I break some pots. I find a new mechanic. There are now these like floaty, glowy purple runes. When I bump into them, it shows me a door is like filling up with runic symbols.
Cool.
And when I hit all three of these that I can kind of see in this area, the door fills up and then it lowers. So I can now go through this door. I'm also now in Gorilla Woods, and the music is different and still very cool and very funky.
Nice.
In this next sort of flat area, I can see a locked paddle that I could unlock. I get another chest that gives me an upgrade. I now can carry 150 fruit instead of 100. I see a post box, some of which I've seen before, but I'm still not sure how to interact with them yet, so I'm very curious about those. And I encounter some bunnies that tell me that I need to deal with the sootlings, which is now my new short-term goal. And that is my 10 minutes.
So I'm interested in the proportion of downtime that you spend while playing this, because I would imagine that with the locations at which you can, air quotes, jump and play pinball here are going to be very authored and very constrained. So what's the sort of the pace of this in terms of how often you're doing all of the pinball shenanigans and what are you actually doing or thinking about or pursuing in between those moments?
So I would say not having counted the minutes, it certainly feels like I spend most of my time pinballing. I suppose the best way to describe it right now is it feels like I'm playing a round of pinball and then at my leisure, I can walk to the next pinball table.
Okay.
So like these are all little pinball elements that are separated by a short walk.
Right.
So
it's like the mini golf to golf.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it doesn't feel like I'm playing a long game of pinball.
Right.
Like I don't feel like I'm not playing a game and someone's like, they've been on the same ball for the last 10 minutes. Whoa! Like, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like I'm learning a very simple pinball table, figuring out where the shots are, and then going, cool, this one, I've got all the stuff it can give me. Like quite literally, I have all the fruit that this little pinball element can give me. So I will leave now, which leads me to another spot where I could just stand still as Yoku until I roll to the next area.
Okay.
Right now, that's been relatively linear. Like I've needed to just progress to get to the next thing. But going forward, I know that will start becoming more about do the pinball element, and now there are many ways you could go. Which way do you want to go? What are you after? That kind of stuff.
So that kind of leads into the next thing that I wanted to ask about, which is if you think about a traditional pinball table, it is here are your dimensions of physical space.
Yep.
Cram and layer as much shit into that as you can.
Yeah.
And this feels like almost like you've unpeeled that layer cake into its many layers, and you've distributed each kind of layer across a broader area of space. So what's your sense of the reuse of space, or how many different ways you can use the same space for these pinball elements?
In what I've encountered in the 10 minutes, it doesn't necessarily feel, as I'm moving through them, like I will want to return to these areas.
Okay.
I don't recall from my full playthrough if that is actually accurate of these specific areas. I don't feel that is accurate, but in this moment, in these 10 minutes, it feels like, and now I am done with those areas and I shall move on. I know that there are things that I've seen in there that I haven't interacted with because I don't have the ability yet.
Right.
So I have a sense that I will probably come back here to interact with those things, but in terms of pinball, it feels like they're done.
Okay.
And yeah, so that concept you're talking about with like pinball gets increasingly dense because it's a pinball table and you want lots more pinball in your pinball table.
Yeah.
Whereas here they don't have that requirement. If they want a specific kind of feeling or method of interaction or a kind of shot they want me to make, they can just make a bespoke little element somewhere in this giant island.
Yes.
That I can get to at some point.
Yep.
And it's kind of worth noting here that so far, no two sort of like bespoke camera fixed pinball elements have felt the same. They all feel similar in that they're all pinball, but none of them feel like they're the same layout or the same pattern of shots that I'm making.
Yeah.
They all feel so far like I'm trying to find a different kind of shot, or I can see that there's a loop here. I wonder whether I should go high-low or low-high. Wonder which of those is easier. I wonder which paddle is going to be easier to get to this side of the map from, and is it the one that I think it is or not? Or do I have to figure out how to get to the other paddle with the right speed so that I can get where I want to go? And there's also, for the way that I've experienced pinball, on an actual table, I feel like there's a long period of time where I'm just kind of content that the ball isn't being lost and I hit something.
Yeah.
Right? Like I hit a bumper and then the ball came back and I'm like, yes, 10 points.
I pinball.
Yeah. Whereas here, it's very clearly like, you know that good shit in pinball where you get a nice loop and the ball goes around and it ends up somewhere else and a light comes on? Like, it's just that. I don't have a point where I'm just happy that the ball didn't fall off the table, because as of yet, there have been no consequences for missing a ball other than it takes a little bit of time for me to put it back where I want it to be.
Right.
So it's just about fine-tuning those cool loops and those cool routes that I want to find, rather than trying to keep this ball alive that cost me $1 to play this table that I've never seen before.
So does it feel like a safety net, or does it feel like does it feel like it's building towards eventually kind of taking away the bumpers and allowing you to lose your ball?
In this 10 minutes, it certainly feels like they're setting me up for, hey, it is still pinball, right? Like there's a gutter here, the ball can fall in it. It's just right now, resets are free. Beyond this 10 minutes in the time I spent with it, there is kind of a penalty for repeated failure. They put like a briar patch thing below the table. If you fall on it, you lose some fruit.
Right.
But you never die. Like you'll only ever get punished by going, you fell off the table, you lose 3 fruit out of the 100 that you have. And it's always easy to get more. So it always feels more like a, hey, you can be better at pinball than that. Like you know you shouldn't be dropping the ball, right? Rather than the way a real table feels where, well, that's $1 gone now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can clearly see the connection between, well, if we had to have something that could function as a pinball, what about a dung beetle? You know, yes, that works. You've got this round object. It gives you a way of locomoting around the world in terms of rolling it. It's got that kind of consistency of the ball, the circle, the sphere-based motion. But I'm curious as to what you think about why a post-delivery person Why a postal service? What is it that brings to this game? Why doesn't Yoku have some other kind of job?
My spitball here is that that idea of the post doesn't stop.
Right.
Because longer term, I think the way that this game is going to unfold is Yoku is successful not because Yoku is bigger, stronger, powerful, or smarter necessarily than anybody else on the island. It's determination.
Okay.
Yoku just keeps going. Whereas the other characters that are in typical sort of like RPG fashion going, I need you to get this. It's not where I thought it was. Maybe it's over there. Thank you. Are sort of like, well, I live here.
A passive-aggressive 5-year-old.
Yeah, they're all sort of like, there is a problem that's not where I am, and I'm not going anywhere because I live here.
Cool.
But you're the postal service. You have to go everywhere anyway. So while you're at it,
Aaron, do you have an angle on this?
This has sort of an irreverent absurdity that maintains a chill quality throughout as well, which I find really endearing. That it's absurd but not wacky. It simply is. But watching this, I was immediately sold on it in spite of the fact that there's no other title that I can really easily tie it to beyond the Sonic pinball games, I suppose. But I want, this just clicks with me. Like I understand the appeal of this experience, even though it's something that I'm kind of struggling to put into words.
Okay.
I think the thing that struck me about it when I played through all of it is kind of that same feeling of just being joyous that you get from a lot of Nintendo games.
Right.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, much like a modern Mario game, there's not necessarily any penalty for failure here or even a way to fail. But there's a lot of rich interactions that I can have. And everything in this environment is just kind of really happy for me to be here. Like even the eel that was trying to extort mushrooms from me wasn't like, give me a mushroom or I'll murder your family. It was like, give me a mushroom, please, so that you may pass. And I was like, you die now. The post goes on.
I'm thinking about this. I'm actually wondering if part of the charm that has come up a number of times here is an idealistic harkening back to the post arriving as a way of building community and having a conversation and meeting somebody and catching up on the gossip. It's that sort of lifeblood of the village kind of thing. Yeah.
And like small town quaintness kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think coming to this as an outsider, as the new postal officer, I think gives you an opportunity to feel welcome, even though you are an outsider.
Yep. Even though, they're just happy to see the postie. That's less important that I'm not the regular postie. Yeah. I think the other thing that the postman or the postal service gets is I have passed a number of red letterboxes.
Yeah.
And in terms of collectibles and Metroidvania, I have gone past a number of these and I don't have any mail yet.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's sort of sowing these seeds of like, well, you're the postman. Eventually you will need to deliver the post.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I have a narrative reason for backtracking all the way across this place to every single post box eventually to deliver their mail. And while I'm there, that's another chance for me to find more collectibles, get more fruit, use my power-ups in ways that I couldn't before, because I'll return to areas with new abilities that I didn't have previously that I can then use to find other areas, etc.
Yeah, because if you kind of what if this and substitute being a postal delivery service to some other sort of community things, like if you were a doctor or if you were a priest, you could still be doing all of this to and froing around the environment, but your reasoning for doing so would be very different. And the urgency for why you were going from place to place would have a very unchill vibe to it.
Yes, if I was a fiery rather than a postie, if I'm rushing across the landscape, something's up.
Groovy. Shall we do a 10-minute check?
Sure. What is this game? Well, it's a platformer without jumping and instead pinball. In terms of how to play, yes, it's very, very simple mechanical buttons for me to trigger. I very much like that I literally use the triggers for the paddles and the flippers because that way it feels kind of like I'm doing pinball on a table because I'm pulling triggers, in a way that on a keyboard it wouldn't. I haven't tried playing this game without a controller, but I don't imagine it feels nearly as like implicitly enjoyable, just because it will feel more disconnected. In terms of how to play beyond that, I really think this game has done an outstanding job of giving me so many clear goals at different time frames.
Yeah.
Right.
So that opening cutscene is like a minute or less, but I already know that there is some giant, terrible thing happening on this island that hasn't come up again yet, very much, that I'm probably going to have to encounter or deal with in some way because I'm the protagonist. I know that I need to get to Nim, who is still very far away on the map, and I've already overcome my first problem of the eel that wanted mushrooms. And as I said, at the end of this, I get another one, which is these bunnies want me to clear out where they live, because there's these other creatures living there. So like my sense of purpose here is astounding for only playing 10 minutes. I can't think of another game I've played in recent memory that's as clearly laid out what it is I'm here to do as this game's done.
Very good. I think that means that it's time for the plugs.
Hi, welcome to the plugs. I'm different Steve now. Plug Steve. If you have enjoyed this episode or not, hell, I'd love to hear from you either way. We all would. You could get in contact with us and let us know what you're thinking. You could email us. The email address would be contact@thefirst10minutes.com. Or you could find us on the socials. That'd be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Libsyn, if you prefer. Those are the main ones you'll find us on. And in all of those places, we will be called The First 10 Minutes. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what's happening. Let us know what you think. Further, if you'd like to find us individually, Tony, where you at?
If you'd like to get in touch with me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is @Kalinscald. That's KALINSKALD. I also do another podcast called Downloadable Context, where I have a chat with game developers about what makes them tick, and you can find that at downloadablecontext.com. Hey, Aaron.
Yes.
What about you?
If you would like to find me, head to Twitter @RundownFlamingo. Hey, Steve.
Hi. Twitter, be fine. Just _Steve Halliwell. I'll be there. Give me a shout. Which brings us to the end of the episode. Thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed it.
We will catch you again next time.
Yay.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
See ya.